Well, hello there. Okay, I've been having some audio difficulties, as some of you are aware. One of my previous videos posted and had no sound at all, and I had to replace it. And even then, one of my videos, it's like an old kung fu movie. I'm so out of sync, the audio and the video. The second one wasn't quite so bad. Hopefully that sync problem won't continue. And if it does, I hope you don't be too distracted by the fact that my mouth doesn't match my voice as the way it should. At any rate, enough of that. I'll do the best I can. Oh. Glowing eyes, voices that don't match your mouth. I really am possessed. Ah! Okay, where am I? I believe I was... I just finished talking about how, when the end of August, the teaser website was replaced by a full website. And at that time we began to learn something about the storyteller, which we never learned before. Okay. Previously, as I had mentioned, the storyteller back in 2005 was just thrust upon us actually thrust upon A&D by promoting, marketing, and you know, they had to use her as the icon at the last minute, and no backstory was developed for her whatsoever. And so nobody really knew who the hell this woman was. She was just there in the commercials going, "Once upon a time," and then torturing some poor bastard with a big bed of nails, and impaling him, and you know, with her snippy scissors, and that was about it. You know, she was lurking around the house where evil hides, but we really didn't know who she was. There was no developed backstory for her like there was for Jack or the caretaker or the director. We knew all about them, and a whole big detailed story about their lives and who they were and how they got to be whoever the icon was had all been developed and it had been presented on the website. We even knew more about Eddie and Cindy, those icons that never were, from backstories that got spread around after they were replaced. So it was really weird, the storyteller. And that's probably part of the reason why, for many years after that, there have been some people who insisted that she was never an icon at all. Of course, when 2006 came around, it was reinforced that she was an icon because she was one of the 4 icons used for the event. Well, she needed to have some identity, because she really didn't have one before. Now, I wanted to point out that she did speak in the old TV commercials for Halloween Horror Nights 15 Tales of Terror back the year before. And when she spoke in those commercials, she spoke, with no regional accent whatsoever. But when her voice began to appear on the website, once it went full and had all the information about the various haunted houses and things, there was a part of the website that was devoted to the haunted house Dungeon of Terror Retold, which was the house which was going to be associated with the storyteller, and there was lots of stuff about her you could click on, and you could hear her voice there, and her voice clearly spoke with a southern regional dialect. She hadn't the year before. So this was new. They somehow retconned her or changed her to make her someone apparently from the South, although where in the American South she came from we have no idea. It could be anywhere from Georgia to Texas. Who knows? But it did sort of give her that sort of regional feel and made her a bit more rural, although there are many fine cities in the South. Somehow the way she spoke made her sound more like a country marm than a city girl. And so it kind of made you wonder about this woman. Who is she really? And there was something else on the website that sort of gave a bit of a clue, maybe. There was a fairy tale that if you click the right thing, you'd hear her narrating the story. And it was a fairy tale, a very gruesome fairy tale about a little girl named Elizabeth, except it had nothing to do with the Dungeon of Terror house as it was described. So, what, And some of it, well, I personally decided myself, with my own twisted imagination, that maybe this was some sort of clue about Elsa Strict, which was her name. It was revealed on the site at this time, when it went full live, that Elsa Strict was the name of the storyteller, thus the ES on the notes in the drawers. So that Elsa and Elizabeth might be one and the same, and maybe this story was somehow connected to her origin. And I further expounded upon that in the video I did for Icons covering the Storyteller a while back, and you can go back and check that out. And please do, many times, and favorite it and like it. Nothing like shameless self-promotion. Okay, now, so there we go. We found out her name. We found out her apparent part of the country she came from, sort of from her voice. But what more about her? Well, from the description of the Dungeon of Terror house, it seemed that it was a bunch of people, a bunch of, I don't know, inbred rednecks or something, a whole clan of sort of those backwoods murderous types that you see in movies like House of a Thousand Corpses and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and other films of those sorts, and that perhaps Elsa Strict was the matriarch of this family, like the mother in the recent remakes of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, they won't leave my boy alone. You know, that one. Remember her? Or you know, Mother Firefly on House of a Thousand Corpses. Similar, sort of, only older and creepier, and not, you know, not Karen Black in a negligee, but no, we wouldn't want to see the Storyteller in a negligee. God, no. Or Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies, but murderous. That kind of idea, that somehow she is in charge of this matriarch of this family. I don't know, but that was sort of a possible interpretation based on the way the house was presented that year. Of course, there's no way of knowing that the whole house that year might not just been a story she was telling. And maybe it never really happened except in her imagination, because storytellers do tell stories, and sometimes the stories really have no basis in reality whatsoever. At least not entirely. So, but at least we had some concept of the Storyteller, which we never had anything before that. And at least we knew her name. Alright, so a month after, roughly, the website goes live, finally! On September 29th, the event opens up, and Halloween Horror Night Sweet 16 Horror comes home at last on that night. And it ran for 19 nights in 2006, the same as it had the year before, beginning on September 29th and running all the way through on select nights to Halloween night itself. Okay, there were 7 houses. There were 4 scare zones, and there were 3 shows. Actually, there were 4 shows. We'll get to that in a bit. Alright, all of the haunted houses and scare zones at Halloween Horror Night Sweet 16, fitting in with the whole theme of reunion and everything else, were new versions of old attractions at previous Halloween Horror Nights in the past 15 years. Thus, we begin with our first house, Dungeon of Terror Retold. As we have been already touching on it, we might as well start there. And, again, retold, because it was the Storyteller's house. It was given to the Storyteller. She had no connection to that house before. You know, she was in Where Evil Hides. But now she was made a part of this house, and the story was retold by the Storyteller, apparently. Now, the Dungeon of Terror, of course, was the original haunted house, the very first year of Halloween Horror Nights, before it was Halloween Horror Nights, when it was still Fright Nights in 1991. They only had one house that year, Dungeon of Terror, which took place in the Jaws ride queue area because the Jaws ride was malfunctioning. All of this has been covered before. That house reappeared in 1992 at Halloween Horror Nights 2 in the same Jaws queue area. In 1993, there was no Dungeon of Terror at Halloween Horror Nights. Why? Because the Jaws queue was no longer being used for haunted houses. The Jaws ride was now fully operational, and they didn't want to log up the queue area with a haunted house anymore. However, there was still a Dungeon of Terror, which reappeared in the year 1994. And that Dungeon of Terror, very different Dungeon of Terror, was one of the first houses to appear in the Earthquake queue area. as you may recall. So after all of that, we had many years without a Dungeon of Terror, or a house by that name. But, oh, there goes a bob. That was a bob, I saw it. There it goes again. There it goes. No, there. There it goes. Yeah. It's this... Again, I have directionally challenged because it no longer looks like a mirror. Okay. Now, so, for the first time since 1993, the Jaws queue was now utilized for a haunted house in this reunion year when it returned to Universal Studios Florida. They utilized pretty much all the areas they had used in the past for haunted houses that year, except for Nazerman's. They didn't use Nazerman's that year. And they had a couple of new places to put haunted houses as well, for a total of 7 houses. But the Jaws queue was reopened for the first time. But they still ran the Jaws ride that year. In fact, in the 5 years that they've had Halloween Horror Nights since then, they've always had a house in the past 5 years in the Jaws queue, but they've always managed to keep the Jaws ride open at the same time. And why not? Why not? I, for one, have no problem with rides being open during Halloween Horror Nights. I often attend rides during Halloween Horror Nights, in between shows and haunted houses and scare zones. I usually have time to go on the Jaws ride and Men in Black and even Simpsons all in one night, and still do all the haunted houses more than once, and maybe see a Bill and Ted show or two. You can do it if you are quick and if you know when the lines are short. And I have friends who are just as psychotic about Halloween Horror Nights as I am. I have one friend in particular who never misses the Jaws ride on any time he ever goes to Halloween Horror Nights. Always goes on the Jaws ride. Every freaking night he goes there. So, even though I do know some people who think it might be a good idea for all the rides to be closed at the event, I don't share that opinion. And I just want to make that known. I have no problem with rides being open. And I think the more rides that open, the better. Okay. Enough of that. Yes. So, the house itself was a roadside attraction, like you would have if you were traveling across the country, not on an interstate highway or freeway, but rather on the older highways that used to go through the country. And back in the old days, like when I was a kid, and you travel across the country, there'd be all kinds of attractions on the side of the road. Really campy, corny things like the world's biggest ball of string, and you know, a 3-headed hamster or something like that. All sorts of weird zoos for snakes and, you know, Gila monsters you would see. And some of these places still exist on certain back roads in places around the world. If you take the turnpike, go all the way up, I don't know if it's a turnpike, I don't know what road, maybe not the turnpike, it's one of those roads. You take one of those roads up north, and you go up through Georgia and to the Carolinas. There's a place along the border in there called South of the Border, and it's one of those wacky-old attractions of this kind for people traveling, and it's like a Mexican theme area, and it's nowhere near Mexico, of course. It's yeah, but it's so you could get your souvenir sombreros and serapes and munch a few really unauthentic tacos and things. It's a fun attraction if you like that sort of thing. So places like that still exist. And of course, House of a Thousand Corpses, the movie, which of course has strong ties to Halloween Horror Night houses over in Hollywood over the years. It even started as a house before it became a movie. Not too many people know that. They know about houses based on movies. They don't realize there's actually a movie based on a house. Zombie designed the house, and then, hey, this will make a good movie. And he took the idea further and made the movie out of it. Okay. Is also set in one of these sort of funky roadside attractions off the beaten path. Dr. Satan, all of that ride, movie murder ride, all of that was very similar to the idea behind the Dungeon of Terror Retold. So you go into this and there's like a souvenir gift stand and a sort of a place, and the storyteller's there taking the tickets, and then you go through the attraction, and you discover it's way too real, and the lunatic rednecks are running around hacking people to bits and stuff, perhaps with cannibalistic intention, and I'm running out of time.